Everyone, this is Najib Baloch from Pakistan, and you're watching my YouTube channel Insani Itihad, which aims to invoke a little bit of humanity in all of us through awareness and understanding. So I had a privilege of watching a peace symposium on Sulha channel, and it was pleasantly hosted by all women panelists, which was a delight to see, because I feel that we, the women who are the receivers of life, nurturers of life, and life begins inside of us, and then it is, transforms and nurtured, and then we give birth to the new life and humanity into this world. So we are the best suited people to talk about peace and spread peace, and engrave this love for peace and humanity and equality and unity from the very beginning inside the hearts and souls and minds of our children. And I think only then there will be a long-lasting and sustainable peace. So anyway, it was a wonderful session. I did not manage to watch it completely, or didn't watch and go back, and I had to do something, so I had to leave in between, and I did make the effort to watch it after the live stream. But I'm sure they talked really nice things about how to achieve peace and mutual respect and mutual recognition and everything. There were some things that I highlighted and I commented on the live chat section, and I had some opinions about it, and I wanted to make a video to reiterate and make more sense of what I wanted to say actually, and get the message across. One thing to start it off, okay, the first thing, there are many Palestinians like Hayat, who thinks that, I have satanic vibes, and they're going all the way to Palestine to actually affect him, and he can see those satanic vibes. Despite that, I actually want peace for Palestinians. I want dignity and respect for them. And I have no personal grudges or enmity or hatred towards them. And I don't necessarily hate them. But I hate the whole, the way that they propagate or try to get political support, and the narrative which they present, in my opinion, is very propaganda based. It's like a very ambitious political ideology or political narrative, in which they feel that anything they can say or anything they can popularize and could support their political agenda goes. So they do, in my opinion, they do not want that anyone can just come. This is what I felt, that whenever I try to discuss things with them, they have a clear-cut mind that Israel is an occupying entity. They are the victims. They cannot do anything wrong. They even overlook the whole idea of terrorism. So they think that, these checkposts, these counter-terrorist operations, even by the Israeli security forces, IDF and Israeli police included, are actually are tools to victimize the Palestinians more. And they don't see those counter-terrorist operations as legitimate to weaponize people who have violent ideas towards the general civilian population of Israel. Now, the difference between Ukrainian resistance which is an actual resistance. And resistance actually means that one army or one militant group is going against another militant group. And there has to be a legitimate ground on which the resistance forces actually are resisting. What are they resisting? Are they resisting law enforcement agencies to bring about peace and stability in society? In that case, that's not resistance. Ukraine was attacked by a foreign enemy, and the citizens rose to defend their country. But in the context of Palestine and Israel, that's not the context. Whenever foreign forces have invaded the land, you can call it Eretz Israel, you can call it Palestine, you can call it Mars, whatever that is. But that particular land, whenever outside forces or foreigners have tried to invade it or tried to conquer it, Palestinian people or Arab people have never rose up and defended this land or the sovereignty of this land. Whether that foreign invader is Turks in the form of Ottomans, whether those foreign invaders are British, whether those foreign invaders are Lebanese, Syrian, Egyptian, Jordanian. In fact, Palestinian Arabs were quite happy. There was no resistance. There was no terrorism. There was no people having guns, knives, and axes in their hands trying to put on the Nakba or resistance against the Jordanian people. Now the question is why? Did they feel that just because we are occupied or the invaders are actually Arabs who speak Arabic, who have the Arabic language, who have the same religion as we have, so we have no motivation or an inspiration to actually put on resistance? Was that the case? Or what was that the Palestinian resistance or Palestinian Nakba didn't arise? And I'm not saying that they would have started fighting that we want to be part of Israel. They could have, in the West Bank was there under the Jordanian control in 1960, up till 1967, yes. So why didn't there was a Palestinian resistance to have sovereignty of the entire region of Judea and Samaria, which the Palestinians call as West Bank? Why were they not fighting for their sovereignty, their independence from Jordan? All of a sudden, Israel, who was defending a war by 5 or 7 neighboring Arab Muslim nations, liberated Judea and Samaria, West Bank. All of a sudden, this movement of resistance, this movement of independence, we want a state. Where does this come from? Then Gaza, everything. And now in this symposium, one thing which actually hurted me the most was there was this one very beautiful, amazing, inspiring panelist. She said that if you want to achieve peace and resolve this conflict, you need to start from where it originated, the core of it. And she said that it all started from the historical perspective of 1948. The Nakba, the first Nakba. Now, I have a serious concern when people go back to history. Usually Palestinians go back to history and they start from the history where the history actually benefits them over the other group. You see, in a conflict, there are two sides. One side is Palestinian, the other side is Israeli. Now, both Israeli Jewish side and the Palestinian side have historical incident in which both these groups were persecuted or maybe were a victim. Now we can talk about the nuances in between, why this, you can go along. But there were historical points where both Jews were persecuted by, in fact, the Ottomans and British and the Arabs, who now associate themselves or call themselves Palestinians. And the again, the distinction between who was the Ottoman when Ottomans were in power and who were the Palestinians, who were the Jordanians Arab and who were the Palestinian Arabs when in 1967 Israel liberated Judea and Samaria, that is known to West Bank as, the Palestinians call it West Bank. So how do you differentiate who was, because, in Sheikh Jarrah, I'll take the example. There was this, Al Jazeera actually interviewed this person, and she said that she bought this land in 1956. I think that her son is recently also released from prison. And it was, I think, Al Jazeera or BBC, I'm not sure. But this woman said that she was married from I think, Gaza or some other part. But her in-laws had purchased this house in 1957. And 1967, Israel, liberated Judea and Samaria. So obviously the people who owned that land, they claim ownership from 1948 or previously, when British ruled the entire region. That included Transjordan, entire Jordan, Israel, everything. Now the thing is, you want to go back to history. One side wants to go back to history, that is the Palestinian side, and it starts where their victimhood or their persecution started off. But they refuse to acknowledge that, in before 1948, when Jews lived in Eretz Israel as, equal or say a little less percentage of in comparison to the Arabs, because there was a big Jewish community which lived in Eretz Israel, and not only in Eretz Israel, in other countries, Middle Eastern countries, there were huge amounts of Sephardic Jews who were living there. They were persecuted in those neighboring countries, and they started coming to Eretz Israel. But the Palestinian side doesn't want to talk about that, doesn't want to talk about that victimhood, doesn't want to talk about that, that discrimination. And then the Holocaust, people just, you were victims of Holocaust, but you cannot victimize those people. Who's victimizing? In 1967, Israel was attacked. They defended themselves and they liberated Jerusalem. They liberated Judea and Samaria. Instead, the Palestinian people should be thanking them that you have liberated from the foreign occupying nation called Jordan, and now we can call ourselves Palestinians and we can be Palestinian Israeli. That woman was actually had a Israeli nationality. She addressed herself as Palestinian Israeli. But now saying that we want all those people who are actually Jordanian nationals, who are Arabic speaking Muslims or Arabic speaking Christians, 70% of the Jordanian population should shift into this tiny state that you guys want to create in Judea and Samaria, and then Gaza. Gaza can't even, afford or handle the number of population there. They don't have enough food for them. They don't have enough electricity for them. The population they currently have right now. Even the Palestinian Authority says that we don't have enough electricity for all the people in their municipality or their local districts control. They don't have the resources, they don't have the food, they don't even have the jobs for those. And now people are so ironic, those people who say that, okay, there should be two-state solution, and in Judea and Samaria there should be a Palestinian state along with Gaza. But just imagine the practicality of it. These two, PA in the West Bank and Hamas or the other political party who just came in power or whatever, they don't have the resources to manage their current population. And these Palestinians who support two-state solution actually are saying that by law of return, all those people from Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan have 70%, 70+% population saying or calling themselves as Palestinian refugees. Where and how the hell you will provide jobs, housing, water, food? How have they worked on this statistics or budgets that this is how they would politically and socially integrate those people? Or are you saying that Israel just all of a sudden say we cease to exist now, we become Palestine, and everyone would just get a right of return, and everyone who wants to call himself or herself a Palestinian refugee can come claim? So the whole idea is that because the Jews have the right of return, but then you have to see why Jews have the right of return. There is a context to it, no? It's like Jews were persecuted in Middle East, in South Asia, in Karachi, in Mumbai, in Mumbai, India. Indian people who were supporting Germans, Pakistanis who were supporting Germany that kill all those Jews and everything. So the Jews were being persecuted in Asia, persecuted in the Middle East, persecuted in Europe. The US didn't want to host them. It said, go back, these ships full of refugees coming from Europe. We don't want you here. And then the British said, oh, you can't come to UK first and foremost because we are on a state of World War II. So we are already, winding up our colonies in Asia and Africa and all the rest of the world. And we have financial crisis and our men are dying and we don't know how to, manage or fund these wars. And you cannot come to UK. But not only you can't come to UK, but you can't even go to the colony of the British, which was the Palestine Mandate, included, Jordan and the Eretz Israel, right now, the geographical, everything. So the Jews were not only allowed in the US or UK, and they were threatened by the entire, European saga of World War II. But they were not even allowed to come to Eretz Israel. So now if a Jew feels threatened in UK, and by the way, ironically, by same Palestinian Arabs, largely they come up with those, what is that, Ali Dawa and those, Palestinian activists and Al-Quds activists. They have those, flags of Palestine on their dashboards or on their cars, and they're ramping up people threatening Jewish communities and Jewish neighborhoods in UK and all those people in the diaspora in America or in all those countries, all the Western countries. So this right of return for Jews is for their security, that they are even in now today. I mean, in this month, this is May 2022, Jewish diaspora in the most freest and freedom and liberty, propagating democratic first world countries are threatened by Muslims. Majority of them are either Palestinian or Palestinian sympathizers or supporters. Pakistani community included, Indian Muslim communities and Indian, even the other communities also involved. They also support Palestine. India has never voted in favor of Israel. That's like a historical fact. All those Jewish community living in the diaspora are in a constant threat, in a constant hatred and discrimination from the non-Jews. And that's why they have the law of return to or make an aliyah to Eretz Israel, just to live their life with peace and dignity. That's the context of right of return. It's not like the Israeli government is, we're going to get you. Yes, of course, there is this religious belief that, Mashiach will come and all the Jewish nation will gather in. But that's a religious concept, and not many, religious Jews actually kind of force this. Chabad is a great example. Chabad Rabbi Rabbi Mendel Schneerson, sorry. So he never even visited Israel, let alone he came. So all those people living in diaspora don't necessarily want to come here come to Israel. They just have this right of return in their back of mind or as a law, because they want to have this sense of security just in case if there is a World War III, just in case things go wrong, we have a safe place to go to where our lives could be saved. So there is a context to this. Now in comes Palestinian people and their diaspora wanted to come back. Again, one, they don't have a land. The British mandate was to create one Arab state and one Arab state for Palestinians and one Jewish state. They never said we will create 3 states. British mandate is clear. One Jewish state, one Arab state. It doesn't say there will be one Arab state, there will be 2 Arab states and one Jewish state. But the British mandate even fulfilled their promise of creating one Jewish state and one Arab state. They only created Jordan for I don't know what reason. And they are never held responsible. They are never questioned that you are the people who created this conflict firsthand. First you promised to these 2 groups, Palestinians or Arabs, whatever you call them, and Jewish people, that we will separate and divide this land, this mandated land, which included both Israel and Jordan, the whole of Jordan. We will create 2 states, one for this side and one for that side. They create one state for Arab people, which we now know as Jordan, and they don't have the guts and confidence to create a Jewish state, and Jews are waiting until 48. They said, God hell with you. We are declaring independence here. We have arrived here. We need to create this nation because, and at that time, even Jews, the existence of the Jewish community was at its optimal threat. I mean, only the Jews in America who were living there could feel safe. But Jews living in Poland or in Russia were still facing severe discrimination and hatred. Germany was half divided by Allied forces and half the other side of the Germany, which was under communist, and there were Jews who remained in that side of Germany were also persecuted in a threat of extermination or persecution. And it was not all those roses, beds of roses and everything, and it was not like that. And these people who just came to Eretz Israel, that we will get our land, the British will divide, and after seeing the World War II, after seeing all these atrocities and going through these atrocities, the British would have this sensibility or sense of responsibility, and they will create one Jewish nation and one Arab nation. But no, they divide the nation and they give Arabs 5 times bigger land than Eretz Israel in the form of Jordan, and then they just leave. They just leave and ask the Arab people to deal with the Jews, either kill them or whatever, or if you can manage to get another state out of this small piece of land which is left, you can do that. Israelis had no other place to go. They had seen the worst in Holocaust, in Shoah. They said, we are fighting. They fought, and in 1940, the first war, the existential war that Israel fought against all these Arab army, Hashem helped the Jews, and they won. Did Palestinians together fought with the Israelis to protect that land? No. They were on the other side. They were on the other side cheering up their Arab Jordanians, cheering up their Arab Syrians, their Arab Egyptians, their Arab Lebanese to, take over this small piece of land from these Jews and kill them all and drown them on. I mean, this is crazy. And in the chat box, there was this guy who was saying that there is a blockade of Gaza. Gaza is a sovereign territorial entity. Okay? So it's like, sometimes I feel that Palestinians live in this wonderland phenomena. They want everything. They are, one of those, that movie where, this chocolate factory ticket, where, this, I think that the guy who is having the trial with his wife, Johnny Depp, yeah, his movie, The Chocolate Factory, I think that's it's called. So they are like that child who wants all the chocolates. He doesn't want any responsibility, he doesn't want, so they want the sovereignty of Gaza, and they want to concentrate their intellectual and, physical abilities to build rockets, knives, create terrorists, train people militarily how to kill a Jew, even small children. But when it comes to food security and water management, they look towards Israel. And it's the same Israel whom they consider their enemy and for whom they are preparing all these rockets and training all those terrorists and those. I mean, how can, it's such an ironic and it's such a stupid thing. I mean, I don't know if I should be angry or I should laugh at their narrative and what they're saying. They are basically saying that we are training ourselves to kill all the Jews, to fight against the Jews, and we don't recognize Israel, but Gaza's food security is the responsibility of Israel. Gaza's water management and electricity management is the responsibility of Israel. Gaza's economic stability is also responsibility of Israel. What is this nonsense? Who does that? And how can people expect such a, divine, it's like, I sometimes feel that Palestinians think that Israelis are gods. So they can only provide them these things. Otherwise, they cannot manage their own water. They cannot manage their own food security. And then they say it's a blockade. It's not a blockade, sweethearts. Because Gaza has its own government and it's a sovereign territorial entity. So those borders, which, your border security forces and those checkpoints of, Gaza, between Gaza and Israel are just like a border between Pakistan and India. I cannot just simply walk into India and an Indian cannot just simply walk into Pakistan and do whatever the hell want. And especially the Gazan cannot walk into Israel because they come with knives and, weapons and axes and the aim to kill and destroy Israel and kill civilians. And they don't even, they are very smart. They don't resist, the real resistance, the likes of which is happening in Ukraine is that Ukrainian army is fighting the Russian army. Here the resistance is these people are coming with guns, knives and axes and they are killing innocent, unarmed civilians. They don't have the guts to fight the IDF. They know that if they would carry the gun and knife or axes, those Israeli soldiers, if they're 18 or 19, they would shoot them right away like a bullseye. So the resistance has some decorum, has some, please, I mean, this is something, I mean, I want to understand. Like that guy said, there are so many nuances outsider people like me won't understand. Sweeties, I really want to understand those nuances and I really want to sympathize with Palestinians, but the way they are propagating this political agenda, I'm sorry, I don't think any sensible, reasonable person who uses a little bit of mind of his own would be able to, support this kind of propagandas or, this is completely illegitimate cause. Palestinian cause for me is a completely illegitimate cause. It is stupid. I'm so sorry to say. I'm really sorry to say. Right now, the whole world is Abu Akle, Abu Akle, Abu Akle. Shiri Abu Akle died. She died. This happened. That happened. Disrespect of. Do you realize 3 families have been destroyed? 3 families have been destroyed. 3 women have been widowed. 16 children of orphaned. What do you tell them? Does the world sympathize with them? Did they acknowledge that this was such a bad thing that these young men, teenager, one of them I think is 18 or 19 something, they walk in with an accent's hand, and somebody who's coming from a Torah Chavruta, or I think Shiram, or maybe going for a Marev, and he's coming back, and these guys just scared them. Nobody is there to sympathize with Israel, that the security situation that these Israeli people live, the Israeli civilian live under this constant fear. And then the victim is the other person. And then people legitimize this terrorism by saying, well, you see, Israel is the most powerful country now, and Palestinians are underdogs. That's why we will go back to history, but we will go back to history where the Palestinians are persecuted, so to prove that this underdog is actually a victim. So not only the Palestinians are victim at this stage where Israel relatively is strong, and they are trying to portray, although I don't think that Palestinians are underdog. They have 2 governments inside so-called Israel-controlled territories. They have a government in Gaza which throws and fires rockets every now and then and sends trained terrorists to kill Israeli civilians every now and then. And then there is West Bank, which not only gets foreign funding, foreign support, and Israel also provides them support, municipal and communal support, like in the form of water, jobs. There are hundreds of Palestinians coming from Gaza and the Palestinian control areas in the West Bank to work for Israeli businesses. What is this? What is this? I mean, and ironically, the guy who drove these 2 terrorists was actually their employer. And they killed their own employer who drove them to that place and killed 2 others. I mean, this is how the Palestinians think that they would achieve peace, by Israelis just giving them everything without they taking any responsibility whatsoever. So it's Israel who has to make all the sacrifices because we are strong. America is the most strongest country. Will it provide all the financial resources, jobs, food security, electrical security, and water to Afghanistan? Would they? They left the moment Afghanistan, was costing them too much. They left. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. This is not how you will achieve sustainable, long-lasting peace. West Bank, Judea, and Samaria is not just important for Arab Christians and Arab Muslims. First and foremost, it's the first and holy sites and holy areas for the Jews, then for the Christians, and then for the Muslims. Jerusalem, in Jerusalem, religiously, Jews are discriminated way more than the Christian. I don't think Christians are ever barred from going to their churches. No, I don't think so. That would be a propaganda and a lie. But they are never barred from any of the churches. Muslims, you can't even think of. You can't even think of. It's the Jews who are religiously persecuted and discriminated in Jerusalem. And then the victim is other. It's like Palestinians are, we're going to persecute and discriminate the Jews, but we are the victims. And we're doing it because of the Nakba. I mean, this is ridiculous. Literally. I mean, instead of empathy or sympathy or support, I don't even get angry on them. For me, they're jokers and they're joking and they're doing this drama acting thing. And I laugh. Literally. Now I have come to that stage that I laugh. But I still wish you, and I have wished in that symposium as well, I wish both the Israelis and Palestinians, wish you all the best of luck. You see, we are the third people, we are the outsiders here in this conflict. Pakistan, who has nothing to do with this conflict. I mean, it's nothing. We have nothing to do with Palestinians and we have nothing to do with Israelis. But still, my passport says that it can't be used to travel to Israel. And therefore, I am a victim because I cannot go to Israel and convert myself into Judaism. And two, there is a really amazing Israeli guy that I like and I can't have a relationship with him just because I can't visit Israel. It's such a sad thing. You see, I have made myself a victim like this. I mean, this is such a joke. I do actually want a relationship with that guy, but well, we're just too far and too barred to see each other because obviously you can't leave Israel as a Jew because that would be a very bad thing and a transgression as a Jew to leave Eretz Israel for any other place in the world. And I can't visit Eretz Israel because if I will visit it, then I will have to go back. And as a aspirant convert and who has a Jewish soul, I can't do it because for me, at least for my soul, because my body is not converted to Judaism right now. Technically, I'm a Gentile, like physically, but my Jewish soul would get the heat, and it would be really, really hard if I go to Eretz Israel and then I would come back to Pakistan. Oh God, no. And that was the answer the Rabbi gave, the Chabad Rabbi, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, that if there is a halakha which can say that you can come to Israel once and then go back to US, I might visit. But there is no halakha. I mean, you come to Israel, you stay in Israel. You don't go. And I come out of Israel and come to Pakistan, that would be no. And even I won't even be able to go back to New York if I end up going to the US, living in New York, I would make an aliyah and then I would probably never go back to New York. Just for a visit, seeing family maybe, or for studies, I don't know. But most likely it is that I would stay in Israel forever. I think that's for any other Jew. A Jew religiously is not allowed to abandon the most holiest place on earth because a Jew belongs there. So it's very difficult for us Jews. That sensitivity should also be seen by the Palestinians, and they should also try to sympathize. And one advice I want to give the Palestinians: look beyond yourself. Look beyond your desires, your aspirations, and what you want. See the other person as a human also. And when the Israeli settlers say go back to the Arab countries, and see the hurt in those words, how much they have been hurt by you, that they just say you have those places to go. Just go. We don't have that place. We don't have any other place to go but Eretz Israel. So I hope both the sides have the understanding and sensitivity and mutual respect for each other. And more so, I pray that Pakistan establishes relationship with Israel, because I want to go to Israel and then never come back. Yes, that's my dream. Okay, have a great day, night, or whatever you have. Just be happy. Yeah.